Guys know we have our usual speaker series, and tonight we have Nick Cottrell. I hope I said that right. Of the Chicago Fire FC. He is an account executive for group sales. So again, like I said, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to drop them in the chat. I know we had some questions submitted through the form, so I'll throw those in there if you guys don't. And I'm gonna let him introduce himself and get started.
Well, thank you very much, my dear. It has been a pleasure getting to know you virtually. And thank you all for welcoming me into your homes tonight, especially I know you guys are an hour ahead. So I want to make sure we can really milk every minute that we're together. I'll make it brief about myself, and I don't have anything super formal, and especially in a small setting like this, I want you all to just be able to ask whatever questions that are top of mind. So that way it's more directed by you all as opposed to me, because I know my students in my classroom hate when I do that, so I'm not going to do that here. But my name is Nicholas Cottrell, and I have been in sports sales and recruitment now for 6 years this May, which, man, does time move really fast. I got my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree both from Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So I'm very proud alum, and I'm back there teaching now in our Master of Science in Business. I teach sports sales and management. So it is very much kind of the core of who I've become since my time starting with the Kenosha Kingfish. They were the team that gave me my start in 2014. I was an intern for game day operations, which if any of you have worked in baseball, you may or may not know that basically means you do anything and everything that's asked of you, including changing light bulbs on a scoreboard when it's 103 degrees out and there's no cloud coverage. So I'm very, very white. And as you can tell, even by my really crappy lighting in here in the summer, this pinkish tone is what I looked like when I was working for them all the time. So skin cancer imminent for sure. After I graduated, I got the opportunity to work with the Milwaukee Bucks. That was the team that gave me my professional start. I was with them for a little over a year and a half. And then I went to graduate school, worked at Cardinal Stritch University, where I monitored our student call team, our student ambassador program, as well as managed the book of our student athletes that were prospects for us. So it was the first time I ever got to really do anything on the recruiting end for young athletes, which was a lot of fun because my territory was everywhere outside of the Midwest. So I was working with high schools and junior colleges across the country, which very cool to do when I was only 23. After grad school, I worked for a startup. It didn't go so well, so we parted ways, and I found myself back in sports with the Chicago Wolves Hockey Club. Was there for also a little over a year and a half. If any of you have spoken with other sales folk or just people in sports in general, we always talk in terms of season as opposed to years, because some of us, it just really matters your season. So I was with the Wolves for 2 seasons. And now I just celebrated my year anniversary here with the Chicago Fire last Friday. Most of it, unfortunately, being virtual, thanks to our friend Miss Rona. So very over being at home. Can't wait to welcome our fans back to Soldier Field. When I am not very busy here and working in the sports industry, I spend a lot of time with Polaroid photography. I'm a very closeted Star Wars nerd. And my partner and I love doing stuff with our rescue pit bulls. So I like to try and keep myself well-rounded. But hopefully that was short and sweet enough. Like I said, I really want you all to be able to ask your questions. I know, Kayla, you said that some people had submitted some via your forum. So if we wanted to start with those, and then we can take from the group.
So the first initial question was, what's your favorite part of working with the Chicago Fire?
So my favorite part about working with the Fire is also my favorite part about working in the industry. I am very extroverted. I'm a super people person. If any of you care about astrology charts, I'm like as Gemini as they come. My birthday is June 9th. I'm born at 11/11. So basically you love me or you hate me. I'm crazy or I'm just right. But long story short, in the world of business, it just means I really love people. So really working on problem solving and ideating with my peers is just a joy. And then being able to come up with creative business solutions is why I think I've found success where I have, just because I really want to make sure that my clients always feel like whatever we talk about, however I treat them, whatever product I sell, even if I've sold it 100 times before, it truly feels like they're the only person that has what I'm selling them. I want them to feel that they're as much a part of the club as I am. And I think that's one of those things that you'll hear a lot of people say. You know, you want to not necessarily just love the team that you're working with, although that's a huge plus, but being able for me to work and not just work in a city, but one of the greatest cities. I'm from Chicago, from the South Side, born and raised. So for me to be able to come back here after 7 years in Wisconsin, working with one of the coolest basketball teams, to come back and work in hockey, and now with the CFFC as we start this whole new era, it's been a really cool moment. So
So my first question to you is, how much has your job actually changed because of COVID, or is it still pretty similar aside from, of course, fans being in the stadium and stuff?
yeah, I think everybody's job, no matter who you ask, what industry or what team, all of our jobs have changed eh, very subtly, but then also very dramatically. I think case in point, I was used to, just like all my colleagues, getting into the office at around 8 in the morning. You know, you're up at the butt crack of dawn, hopping on the L and getting to work, and we're hitting the phones and setting up meetings all day. So I'd be speaking anywhere from 60 to 100 people a day. That's dramatically changed. Even the way we approach phone calls is different. I think we all feel differently because of the way our lives have been impacted by the pandemic and what that means for each of us individually. So it means that we have to do our best to practice empathy and compassion on the phone, even if it's not necessarily our pain, but a lot of people are hurting. So I think a lot of my colleagues and I, we find ourselves playing part-time therapists with our clients, which is not by any means something that we signed up for. But at the end of the day, it's the core of being a seller, making sure that you build rapport, that you have a really good relationship, and you should feel kind of honored when somebody that you've sold uh, believes that you care about them so much personally that they're going to share not just their success, but also the pain or whatever it is that they're going through that day. So, some days are easier than others. It's allowed me the ability to work on several different projects. I'm currently working behind the scenes to develop the club's first ever college sales program, something that we'll be able to implement all across the country, virtually or in person. So that's taken up the last several months of my life, which I'm really proud of. And I'm also a part of our new IDEA Council. IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action. And so I sit on our council now, and I work with a really diverse group of people. And our whole goal is to, through the vehicle of football, make sure that we're able to get into all 67 neighborhoods here in Chicago and really promote diversity and equity, and really share what Chicago is all about. We are one of the most internationally diverse teams here in our market. We're very proud of that. And not only that, we have a lot of homegrown kids that are from every which part of the Chicagoland area, from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. So we really are the team of the people here in Chicago. And, we're doing our best to just keep our wits about us. So I think as long as we are keeping ourselves busy with new projects and really keeping our keeping the pulse of Chicago in mind while we trudge through the coming days. We're supposed to start our season up here in April. So hopefully we're going to start returning to some normalcy and having some more direct sales calls and getting more season ticket holders to sign up before our April start date.
Thank you. If you're ever looking for any college students, you have a few right here that, you can try to get involved in that program. Just a little.
Absolutely.
Eddie, oh,
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an industry that like all of us want to get into. Just how hard was it to start in this industry? If you could just give us a background.
Um, I think I have no reason to lie to you guys. It's not easy. I am a first generation college student that has zero connection in the industry. The one thing that is unfortunately true still, even though I'm 6 years away from my undergrad graduation, it's a lot about who you know, unfortunately. So the best advice that I could tell all of you to, start doing if you haven't already, kind of like how Kaylee had reached out to me, like just start networking, have, genuine conversations, and, just try to get to know people. because then moments like this happen. But the reverse of that is for students like yourself, that you guys are finding really great connections so you can get those, foot in the door opportunities. If any of you are interested, especially in the sales realm, highly encourage you to find sales academy programs. They typically take place on the weekend because of the pandemic. Most of them are free when they typically would cost, $90 plus. So I know groups like NASCAR and the Milwaukee Bucks and HSBE, they all have different programs, much like the one that I'm trying to build, to get you involved and show that credibility before you're even in the industry, because it is hard. I want to say, before I even interviewed with the Bucks, I probably had 3 or 4 teams that I was going through the process with that at some point no voted me. One team, the Detroit Tigers, I made it to the final round. I really thought I got the job, and then I never heard from them again. So that was pretty disheartening. And the job hunt kind of sucks, especially in a world post-COVID. It's going to be very difficult for you guys. So get ahead of the curve. Whatever that means as far as experience for the niche that you're trying to join in sports. But then just connecting, so you have some people. I know recommendations now more than ever are being asked more than even cover letters, because if somebody can call me and say, hey, we just had a student from the University of Hartford named Courtney, and he's really interested in being a part of our club, what is something that we can do? How do you think he could fit here? And I would want to fill in. So build your network, because it is going to be tough. I think probably altogether I'd applied to like 115, 120 teams before the Bucks finally took me. So it's a patience game, but it's also nobody was able to tell me how to get ahead of it. So I hope that just that little tidbit, if you haven't heard it, you guys are able to take that action step, in the coming days.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just want to ask a question based off what you just said, with really just the denial part of the application process. Like, it's bound to happen to everyone, but how exactly did you keep your head up, stay motivated in order to keep on applying?
I think for me, it was just, eyes on the prize. It doesn't matter what part of sports you're in. Any team you go to, they're going to tell you you're a part of the sales process. So even if you're in marketing or HR, it's your job to help grow and enhance the movement of whatever clubhouse you're working in. I think a lot of things. My brain I just have a million answers at once sometimes. Can you ask your question one more time? Because I want to make sure I don't do I over talk.
So really just how did you stay motivated in order to keep on applying to jobs
through the denial?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We're back. Just got to sometimes kickstart. It's been a long day. And when you have that passion and that drive that everybody wants, both on or off your respective field of play, that's what's going to set you apart. And just knowing that every no is just a step closer to yes. And I know that's boring and cliche, but it is really true. And it is going to be tough. And I think the one thing that was really tough for me, which is why, if any of you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to help with resume and cover letter building, just because it's something I enjoy and I'm really good at. And because I have not been really good at it once I had just left college. And I think a couple times I had put on there certain organizations that I was proud of, and as a gay man, one of the few openly gay men in a front office, especially in the MLS, there have been many jobs I've been turned away from just because somebody will find out that I'm gay, and it'll turn around and they'll be like, oh, well, it actually, because of this, we're not going to hire you. And, dealing with that type of prejudice is something that I was really hoping, because I see sports as this big edifice of hope and light, but it's, mired in controversy and racism and homophobia and misogyny, and trying to get through that is going to be tough. All of us on this call, I think, just from even the way that we look, I think that there's always that chance for somebody to say the wrong thing. And all I have to say is that if you're ever going through an interview process or you're going through anything and there's a club that denies you for a mundane reason or for an outright hateful reason, well, then you know what? They were never meant for you anyway. That's something that it took me a while, because there were several teams, and I won't name them, but there were several teams that when I found out the real reason why I wasn't getting hired, it was devastating. I could have crawled up in a ball and said, screw sports, this really isn't for me, but I kind of refused to give up, and that's really the gist of it. There's a very high turnover in sports, unfortunately, because I don't think people talk about. I mean, our jobs are really hard. It doesn't matter where you're at. You're working crazy hours when the world is normal. You're pulling anywhere from 60 to 70-hour workloads. Sometimes 80 plus if you're in conference mode or in playoffs. So it's a lot. You just got to give yourself patience, find hobbies, make sure you have something else besides your work, because if the work is all you have, you're going to burn out super duper fast. So whether it's reading comic books or painting or hitting it hard at the gym, like whatever you do, do it for you, give yourself space. And as you go through the interview process, just remember, one more no is just closer to that first yes. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
of course.
As people are waiting for more questions, would you just tell us about like what exactly it was like for you to get to the position that you are in now, like starting from an intern, you said, with at a baseball stadium to where you are now? How exactly did that really go?
Yeah. So anywhere in sports, there's typically going to be several pathways for any single role to get to another role. And for a majority of the past 6 years, it's been very much, I have followed the sales path, if you will. And so my internship was in game operations, but I leaned heavily in the food and beverage. And so I helped put together different creative packages so that way when our fans were out, there was something new that maybe they didn't see on the menu the week before, and just try and drive revenue streams that way. And that was when I really figured out I was naturally really good at sales. So I had taken a couple of classes through my local community college, because there weren't any at Carthage at the time. My undergraduate degree is actually in public relations. So once I really got a firm grasp on sales, I had graduated college early to save myself some money. And so I took that other time to really get involved in the retail space and understand what it's like to build a successful book of business while applying for my jobs. And once I got my in with the Bucks, it was just a lot of everything you do in sports gets ranked. And so it was always, what do I have to do to be in the top five? And once I got to the top five, what do I have to do to be in the top three? And, before I was number one in my department as a sales associate, I mean, there were two conversations that I vividly remember still, where my managers thought they were going to have to let me go because I was not selling well and I couldn't really find a good groove at work. So we were talking about, what next steps could look like. And so it was really about digging my teeth in even harder and being like, what do I have to do to change my mindset and my attitude and the way that I work so that I can really prove to these people like I am a Buck and I really plan to be here for a while. And, found a lot of success that way, built a lot of programs. My team and I built the NBA award-winning diversity and inclusion program. More specifically, I was involved with the inaugural Bucks Pride Night that's now entering its sixth season. It's won a couple of awards from the NBA from Game Ops, so it's been pretty humbling to kind of have that tacked onto my resume. But I just got involved in spaces. If there was something that I was interested in that I saw my colleagues were doing, I would always be like, hey, I know that you're meeting with so-and-so. I'm just looking to learn. Do you mind if I come and sit in on the meeting? And more often than not, that opened more doors, and so those sales kind of came really naturally. A client that I had sold courtside seats, he ended up being the vice president of Johnson Controls, which is now an arena partner at Pfizer for him in Milwaukee. So to do that all before I turned 23 was pretty humbling. And then going to grad school and working in a university proved really helpful, just simply because as you all know right now, you are basically kids in college. And I say kids, I know that there's not that big of an age difference between us, but there is, in the sense that the way that culture is, though, when you're an undergrad, there is a huge chance that my undergrad and your undergrad experience are vastly different just because of our age. And you guys are the it of the now. And so trying to stay up with the it of the now, the older you get, is increasingly difficult. And so in sports, I really lean on a lot of my connections that are all in undergrad, and I want to hear feedback of what's cool, what's not cool. I still refuse to sign up for TikTok because I'm still not over Vine not existing anymore. So, and I'm somebody who still uses Facebook for birthdays because I'm too lazy to put it in my contacts in my iPhone. So, that was a lot of fun to just build a program there. And all my students have since graduated, and I'm proud of where a lot of them are at. Um, but then, time came to end that, and I headed back home here in Chicago to work with the Wolves hockey team. A lot of the same there. It was just finding spaces that weren't honed or that people didn't care about, because that's where the low hanging fruit is in sales, especially in sports. And so I built a lot of cool programs, built a really big book of business, had a lot of fun, building stuff. My Star Wars night, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. So to finally do something where Lucasfilm is sending me letters with Lucasfilm heading was, a pretty big geek out moment. And to see some of my work actually get broadcast on TV for the first time a couple of years ago was a really big deal. Just putting together my first ad, and that came as, one of those conversations of, hey, I see you're doing this. How can I be involved? I just want to learn. And so that was a lot of fun. And because of my success there, the Chicago Fire has been going through a very intimate rebuilding period. We currently are, I believe, on SB Nation, still listed as one of the ugliest, if not the ugliest logo in pro sports. Very aware. We're not sure what this is. We're working through it right now. We're having a whole big rebrand. It's very rare for a team to go through 2 rebrands in a decade. We're doing it in 2 years because we're not sure what happened. And so top down, not just from the logo, but inside the office and out, they needed some experienced people that were going to come in, build new programs. And I've built a very solid foundation for myself here in the Midwest as somebody who loves a good challenge, clearly knows how to talk and doesn't shut up, and just wants to constantly make the mission and vision of my team come to life. So that was a very long answer, but
That was good. Another one of the questions was, what do you think the future of sports is going to look like? I mean, kind of post-COVID, I guess, but like the future as a whole, what do you think it's going to look like?
I think the future is 3 things. Number one, I think the future of sports is in esports. I have unfortunately lost a couple of friends that I've played football with in high school to a couple different illnesses associated with the concussions that they sustained during our tenure playing football. And it's pretty jarring to lose a teammate, especially at our age. We're not that old. We're only 27, so it's pretty disturbing. And so I think we're seeing the long-term tolls it's taking on people's bodies. And I'm not saying that it'll be a fully digital sports world anytime soon, but I could see that happening just because we're getting smarter digitally than we are in person. And I think COVID just expedited that a little bit. So I'd say esports is number one. The second thing, the future of sports is female. Follow your female colleagues, listen to female sportscasters, female coaches. I think more now than ever, I'm watching the success of my female peers as the greatest catalyst for my own success, which sounds selfish, but at the end of the day, you want to be with a team where the people around you make you better. If you walk into the room and you're the smartest person, you're doing it wrong. And I've noticed that at every club where there is senior female leadership, the club makes more money, the club is happier, and the club has a stronger longevity. So another little tidbit, the more female leaders you're able to connect with, it also just speaks to your ability to want to broaden your horizons and your perspective. And third, and definitely most important, I believe sports is finally becoming as diverse as it intends to. It's no longer just we're talking about it. We are seeing more people of diverse heritages, gender identities, sexual orientations that are taking the respective fields of play. And I think that when a team is as representative of the place that it is in, that is when it's most successful, because it's authentic, it's no bullshit. And I think the more we're able to do that in sports, the more that we can create authentic everything, authentic culture, and it's not just a mouthpiece on social media. That is when you're going to continue to see success. So again, my top three things I see sports becoming: it's going to be very digital, it's going to be full of some badass ladies, and it's definitely going to be diverse and purposely diverse and actionably diverse and truly equitable.
I love the sound of that. Thank you.
Oh,
there you go.
You can finish. What you about to say?
I was going to say any other questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. Our next question is, what qualities makes a great sales manager?
A great salesman in sports is someone that understands, number one, no 2 days are the same. But with that, it's also somebody that believes in having a process for themselves. Teams are very good at setting you up with expectation of the industry, but then it's ultimately about figuring out a process that makes you successful. And when you can hone that, master that craft, take that into each stage of your career, that is important. Receiving feedback, being coachable. It has been the bane of some people's existence in my circles for them to not be able to receive feedback. And I think maybe it's because I'm bluntly honest, it's the Gemini in me. I would rather somebody tell me, hey, Nick, you're talking too much. You're saying and like on your phone calls a lot, or you're not being a team player than, the passive aggressive talk around. And if somebody could say that to me and I go, thank you so much, I appreciate that. I validate how you feel and I want to enact that change. And then taking that is huge, because it could make or break your career if you've got somebody who really just loves and cares about your profession and who you are. And, they end up ultimately, they don't get to see that best part of you. I think, don't put those walls up, be open to feedback and critique. And then the other thing is you have to frickin' hustle. I think a lot of people, and I don't know where this stems from, and maybe some of you have experienced it in class, and I just didn't, because it's not what I studied in undergrad. But it blows my mind when there are new sales folk that come into our space, and that, number one, they think that they know it all. It's like, you're greener than the color green, so no, you don't. And when they don't believe in picking up a phone, I don't know of a single sports franchise in America right now that they have a sales team that doesn't hit the phones. Are we using them as much as we did? Absolutely not. And if I said anything different, I'd be lying. But you're still making anywhere from 30 to 80 phone calls a day, regardless of your tenure. I mean, I've been doing this for 6 years, and it's still an expectation that even with COVID, there is at least 30 new touch points I make every single day. And so that's something too, is that you've got to grind. And because there's going to be so many people that say no, and it's going to be a lot harder to get somebody to say yes, especially in markets where teams aren't successful. You just got to trust the process, trust your team. One of my managers, who is the director now of career development at the Bucks, Wes Warren, he always said it best: sports sales is a whole mountain range of peaks and valleys. And truly, some days you're going to be on the top of the Himalayas and you're going to look like a freaking rock star, and you're going to get accolades out the ass, and you're not even going to know what to do with how cool you look. And then there's going to be some days or some months where you don't sell a penny's worth of anything, and you're going to question the totality of who you are. We all go through it. You're not alone. But that is always the moment that sometimes make or break someone. And if you can understand that your career in sports sales is peaks and valleys of a mountain range, you will end up at the top, and you will be really successful and build a great business for yourself. So in short, it's just about being coachable, having confidence in a process that works for you, and just understanding that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy, but if you put in the work, you are going to be successful.
Thank you for that. Anybody else has any questions right now?
Yes, I do have a question. And first off, Nick, thank you for taking this time to speak with us. And my question is, when it came into, would you say you were a more outgoing person when it came to sales? Because for me, when I grew up, like I had to learn how to be a little bit more, outgoing because I feel like everybody in sales has some sort of a charisma that you have to kind of learn it. Some people, but also some people are born with it. But like, how hard did you really have to do that, like in order to make the sales and to meet quotas? Because I know that that's something that people struggle with today, especially with COVID. Like you said about how making phone calls and making sure that you can get X amount of clients to say yes to you. Like, how do you be more charismatic, especially in these tough times? And how do you really convince somebody and persuade someone to buy into your products and services? I know it's pretty broad, but that's something that's always burning in my mind when it comes to business.
You're muted, Nick, I think. Oh, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Can
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Sorry, I hit a button because I coughed earlier, and I just didn't need to hear you guys. You guys didn't need to hear me like dying. Great question, Glenn. Not too broad at all. To kind of address it in the least demonstrative to most demonstrative. First, when it comes to being successful, I don't necessarily think you need to be super outgoing, but you did hit the nail on the head in that, charisma is something that you can learn. What I believe, especially for people who aren't naturally outgoing the way that I am, who are introverted, you could still be an introvert that has a crap ton of charisma. One of my coworkers, who I love the kid dearly, from when I was with the Bucks, his name was Michael Hill. He went to the University of Kentucky. He was a good old Southern boy, sweet draw, and everybody was sir or ma'am. Just a really nice kid, and it was both his humbleness and just the way that he was raised, that he was always way more introverted, but just very helpful. And so what I noticed that Michael did was that he took his ability to practice compassion and made that his charisma. So that way, when he was working with someone, when he really found that way to connect with them, that is where he put all his energy. So that way he still had plenty of energy for himself and everything else. I don't think the goal, especially of any sales manager in inside sales in sports, is to like totally change a person's personality. We are who we are, and I want my team to be diverse. So I want people to be introverted and extroverted and somewhere in the middle sometimes. So know that charisma is just a really fancy word for figuring out how to bring joy into the conversation. And if you can find your way to bring that charisma, to bring that joy, it doesn't matter if you're the most outgoing. With that said, for me personally, I do believe that it has certainly helped, just because I am outgoing the way that I am. It's very hard for me, especially the more calloused I get, the quicker I age. I don't know. I guess I don't. No, nothing can really dull my outgoingness because it's just who I am at this point. And I think at the end of the day, sometimes the things that could really hurt people emotionally, both just as people or as professionals, sometimes you just got to remember where people are at, especially right now. I've gotten sworn at more now on the phone than I ever have, and been called names and stuff. And I just have to remember, people are people, and chances are I was the sales call that broke the camel's back, and they had a bad day or a bad week or whatever, and people are experiencing death and solitude and loneliness now more than ever. So I think too, it's just, regardless if you're introverted or extroverted, it really does all go back to just be a good person. If you can be a good person and you can meet your clients, you can meet your teammates where they're at from your seat, I mean, it really shouldn't matter. Of course, it is always going to help, just because people that are outgoing typically have a tougher, exterior, just because we're used to a lot of interaction and not all of it positive. So I know that you had a big question, and I kind of answered it several different ways, but I hope that that answers it well, Glenn.
It does. I really appreciate that answer. And I guess my quick follow-up question is that you said we can connect with you on LinkedIn, or did you give us your email or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm happy if you guys connect me on LinkedIn. I know Kalia and I are connected, so if you are connected with her, you can find me in her network. I should be listed as a second contact. Otherwise, just look up Nicholas Cottrell and you'll see my face looking just like literally this. And it is now in the chat, so feel free to copy and paste.
Okay.
Yeah, I am a mentor in Sports Business Solutions Clubhouse. So if you guys have not joined or heard of SBS, once I accept you on LinkedIn, please feel free to head to the website, and you'll have access to not just me, but about 200 of my closest friends that we mentor, from everything from sales to corporate partnerships and community relations and player development stuff. So, utilize my network. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, there's only so many jobs in sports. There'll only ever be so many jobs in sports. And I think right now there's a little over 7,000 of us employed, and everybody knows somebody. So, definitely tap into my resources.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Glenn. And I think I saw a question in the chat.
Yeah. Do you think it's beneficial to get a post-grad degree?
That is a phenomenal question. And I'm probably going to sound crazy because I have one, but no, I don't think that it is. I think that if you were given the opportunity, because while it's harder to find somebody to pay for your post-grad education, it's not impossible. The whole reason I went back to school was because my mentor, Dr. Jennifer Madden, who's now the Dean of the College of Business at Linfield University in Oregon, she was one of the first people that really got me involved in sales and business. And she was very much like, look, there's this brand new program. I want you to be part of the cohort. So I was very fortunate, and they gave me and several of my classmates very generous packages, or there's no way on God's green earth I could have taken out another loan for school. So I think it also depends on like your goals. At some point I am going to realistically have to go back to even get a doctorate or go to law school, because my personal goal is to be one of the first gay NHL presidents. And you need to be as well-rounded as possible. So it really just depends on what your overall career goals are. I think that, as you're just starting, give it, I would say a really solid amount of time is 2 or 3 years post-undergrad. And if your career isn't going the way that you want it to, or you feel that a different education can elevate you to a new industry or a new type of job, that's when I would say to go and get your post-grad work. I think even if I were to go back and talk to myself, the only reason, again, that I also took it was a very intense 10-month program. So I did the work of 3 years and 10 months, which was very daunting. I don't encourage that either. It's a lot of work. But so I guess I amend my answer to no to maybe. It just depends on who you are, where you're trying to go. But definitely the bare minimum, I will say, do not be those students that go right after, unless you are trying to be a doctor, a lawyer, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, a nurse, or an actuary. You do not need to go to grad school immediately after undergrad. So unless somebody's paying for you, or you got like a fat scholarship, just say no. It's all a ruse. So many cool programs now too, that like if you can get a fellowship, like there are sports teams that are now starting to pay to have their people once you're there X amount of years. Like I know at the Fire, if I make it to my 5-year, like they pay for a whole undergrad degree from Southern New Hampshire University if I want to go and like get another education. So, also when you're interviewing, always ask too, what are some of the employee resources that are going to help with lifelong learning, if that's something that's interest to you, because then they'll tell you straight up if they've got an educational partnership and how you can tap into it.
It's kind of related to the previous question. Like, is it beneficial to have a major or minor in sports management, or like suppose I want to get marketing, is only marketing fine, or is it better if I have studied sports management as well?
I am going to say something that would make most admissions officers cringe. It genuinely does not matter what your undergrad degree is, period. Nowadays, it's all about where are you working and what experiences have you have related to your career and your profession, and what are those goals that you're reaching towards. Um, of course, I wouldn't say somebody who has a bachelor's degree in organic chemistry, they should probably not come and do a job in sports. But I think like if you have anything from, I mean, I've had coworkers that finance, econ, marketing. I have a PR degree. I had one friend who her minor was in acting and her major was in math. She really was able to use that acting degree when we're on the phones, and because sometimes you got to pretend like you're doing really well and you really like these people and they could really suck. So she got an Oscar almost every day she turned on the phone. So it really, I think, it helps. The funny thing is, anybody who is typically really successful really quickly in sports, and not to toot my horn at all, it's just very factual. You can look at it on LinkedIn. Most of us don't have sports management degrees, period. Like even my master's degree, I have an MS in business design and innovation, and I specialized in social media and data analytics. So even that is something that, if I lost my job tomorrow, I'm able to take into other things. So I think if you have a versatile degree, those are the ones that typically work the best, long story short. So if you can sneak in some sports management classes, or if you're a sports management major, then I super encourage a minor outside of sports. Long answer made longer. Hopefully that helps.
I had another question actually. You did say data analytics, right? So my major is business analytics. And do you think that there are more jobs or jobs related to that in the sports industry?
Absolutely. I think that's part of even, it kind of goes back to, Kelly's question earlier about where do I see sports going. I mean, just this quarter alone, it's the 8th day of February. We've already hired 2 new business intelligence associates, entry level to join our sales BI team. We just did a whole new changeover. We were with a small CRM company called SSB, and now we have native Salesforce Lightning, which is like it's literally the Tesla of CRM in sports. So to like have this finally makes me, I like literally almost cried. It was cool. But I'm pretty crazy, so that's probably it too. So yes, I think that definitely data jobs are bigger now than ever because you can predict how people are going to buy. You can predict how they're going to interact on social media. And the funny thing is those predictions, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir if this is something that you're studying right now, if you have solid data, you can basically do whatever you want because you turn that right into money. And I think that is such an understated, if I had a child going through undergrad right now, I'd be like, here's the thing, you're doing data, you're doing computer science, and that's it. I don't want to hear anything else. Just because it's super in need, and we're just going to continue to transition that way. So the sooner we each are able to touch coding and touch the world of data a little bit, it'll be huge.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, we don't really have quite a variety of majors within this call right now. Like myself and Courtney are marketing. Javon is management. Karan just told you his, and then a couple other people. Oh, Sam is. Ooh, Sam, what is it? Oh my God! Wait.
Come on.
Wait, give me a hint. Give me a hint. Is it management too, or analytics?
Analytics.
I knew it. Okay, then Sam and Karan are the same. And then a couple other people are science majors who just like to support too. So, I mean, with Karan's question, really, we don't have a sports marketing management program here. So, yeah, this is kind of what we have. And we're all kind of looking to just get in the field in some way. I know personally for myself, I'm still not sure where I want to go yet. I'm going to figure it out eventually because like I only have a year left. but I know that where I start is probably not where I'm gonna end anyways. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, that's what the majors look like in this call. So we're all kind of getting somewhere. We all have something pretty broad that'll settle eventually.
And that's I actually huge though. Like I think that that's funny because it also shows each of your drive to be innovative and just the amount of ingenuity to form an organization like this. I mean, I will gladly help any of you figure out how to say that in an interview, because if you can talk about how at a school that doesn't technically teach the technical aspects of sports business, and each of you are taking what you have learned and you're applying to something that you want to do, let me tell you, I'm going to hire you more than somebody who has a PhD in sports management, because chances are you understand a brevity of things and not just one thing. And I need somebody that's going to come in and be able to paint with the rainbow and not a black and white brush. That's just stupid. So that, like, please know that just because you don't have the sports management degree, like, that's just a huge misnomer. You don't need it. And the other thing that I'll just say, because it reminded me, be very open to relocation. I'm sure you all can probably assume in your market, you know, you have a very limited number of teams for all those states up there in the Northeast. So it's about really setting yourself apart. This is a great way to do that. But, you know, there are going to be more opportunities probably outside of New England for each of you than there are in New England. And that's just the, you know, fact of reality. So, and sports too is something where you're going to miss a lot of, unfortunately, holidays and family moments. So, you know, if you're a super familial person and, you know, you don't want to give any of that up, sports is definitely not your call. And, you know, if you're not open to a promotion, you know, very realistically in the near future, you'll see that I may or may not be leaving my market for the first time in my 6 years, sometime this year. I will say that, and it's a very big deal to try and trust your gut, but you kind of have to in sports because, like I said, if you're charismatic about your profession, you care about what you want to do, it really doesn't matter where you do it. You just got to have a heart and a drive, man.
Oh, okay.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
So when you were going through the interviews for the Bucks and the Fire and the Wolves, did you tailor it differently depending on like the team? Because obviously the Bucks are a much bigger like market to get into than the Wolves or the Fire. So did you do something differently for those interviews, or did you try and stick to the same thing?
So each one is different. I think for the purpose of our call, like I'll more highlight the Bucks thing, just because the Bucks, they're, unless something's changed. I think one of my friends who's interviewing for a job with them, in fact, it sounds like their process is still the same, and it is very lengthy. So there's your phone interview, which is typically 15-20 minutes. If that gets greenlit, then you have another phone interview with who would be your department manager, so inside sales, you know, for entry-level folks. And then if they like you there, you get brought in for your third interview. I know it's, for them, it changes virtual or non, just because Wisconsin's been pretty weird about their response to COVID, as you've all seen. So that third interview can be the last. Sometimes there's a fourth, but the third interview for me, that was 5 hours of my day. I got there at 8 in the morning. My first interview was with an HR generalist. My second interview was with a panel of current inside sales reps. My third interview was with a panel of account executives for the department that I wanted to be, which is group sales and events, where I've been since my first promotion. And then I had an interview with the two gentlemen that would become my managers. And then I had a meeting with Jamie Morningstar, who's the SVP of ticket sales. She's actually leaving the Bucks for Madison Square Garden, where she got her career start. She's a pretty BA lady. But that whole day was very tiring and draining. And then to top it off, what they do is if they really like you and they think that you could be successful, the last thing that you do before you leave, you actually they'll drop a phone book in front of you, and Wes, who I mentioned earlier, he said, "What's your favorite letter?" And I'm like, I don't know, I don't really have one. So I just picked H. Don't really know why. It's just, very symmetrical, I guess. And so he opened it up to an H page, and the top number, he goes, "I need you to call them, and I want you to try and set a meeting." And I was like, okay, like time to shine, and like fully stressed because I know that they have scripts. I know that they have a whole training program that I did not do. I was like, this is going to be a train wreck. And it was not totally a train wreck because I got the job. But it was a little bit of a train wreck in that I used to have this horrible habit on the phone where I would say, that's awesome, as like my filler phrase. And so this woman picked up on the first ring, which I was like, okay, here we go, it's game time. And we had a pretty solid conversation with two grown people looking at you is very intimidating. And we went through the conversation, it went super well. And then at one point, she talked about her involvement with the Autism Society of Greater Milwaukee. And she was talking about her challenges with a child that has autism and somebody to be on the spectrum. And because it was so powerful, I didn't know what else to say. And so I said, like, that's awesome. They still tell that story because I've never been more embarrassed in my whole life that I told a woman whose child's on the spectrum that that's awesome, because it indeed probably is a set of challenges. So I straight up, I remember that happened. They got a good kick out of it, and we said goodbye. And I went to my car and I immediately called my parents, and I totally broke down and started crying. I was like, I'm pretty sure I just screwed up like the dream job. Like, I don't know. I don't think this is for me. And my dad was like, if they can't laugh at that, like, then it's probably not the place for you. So I share that little anecdote because at the end of the day, I was just myself, and that resonated, and I got to show who I was, even though it wasn't the most crowning of my life moments. And, it was a very coachable moment. We had a lot of fun. I really loved my job there. But that's really like, I think each interview you need to prepare for it the way that you need to prepare for it. It's kind of like in sales where, like I mentioned earlier, you need to go with a process that works for you. And I'm sure that, Sam, that's not the best answer because you're like, well, Nick, I need to figure that out. And I think that a lot of that you'll learn that as you kind of go through the process. I don't think there's any one way, but the one thing that I can tell you to do is to be confident in who you are, to really know yourself, know all of your accomplishments, know all of your areas for your improvement, talk about those things, be authentic. um, don't don't bullshit or lie. We could see right through that. And I think too, I'm sure your professors have told you this, and if not, shame on them. You do need to do some type of a deep dive, find out who, something that I always do, even now. I want to know if I were to be in any one of these departments, who would be my direct report? And I try to do my best, even prior to an interview, to figure out what does the structure of the team look like? What are possible opportunities for success, for advancement? I just kind of do a deep dive. I know Glassdoor has increasingly got better about having really good reviews on jobs. So definitely read as well. What are people saying about working there? Just because it's a sports job doesn't mean it's one you want. You'll see that very quickly. I've had a lot of friends that have found really like cool jobs, and then 3 months later they're back in the job market because the team wasn't authentic. So, and that's the other thing, as you are being authentic, make sure that the people that you're interacting with also feel authentic, because if that's not mutual, it's never going to be. And it was something that unfortunately I had felt during my time with the Wolves. I had a great time there, and I did really well for myself, but that was all Nick and a couple other people helping Nick. It was very sad some days the way that people were very siloed. And so you've just got to, I was bummed that I couldn't sense their disauthenticity. I wanted to make sure that it was a place I really liked, and because my family was season ticket holders, I was very like, oh, this is going to be so cool, and it was for a period, but then I lost the facade. So make sure you are authentic, and the people that you're with are equally as authentic, and you'll notice how much you care about a company by how much reading and how much you know leading into your interview. And if you know, you feel yourself kind of waning, then maybe it isn't the job for you. Very long answer, so I apologize again.